Okay, so I'm a house flipper that has flipped 100 houses and sold about 200 when I was selling real estate. So I'm gonna give you my unique perspective on some of these housing market headlines. And over on TikTok, we have a couple million views from doing this. So I wanted to do it here on YouTube too. It's more of a slow build, but it's more fun, and you can, YouTube's better platform for these kind of things because you get to analyze and discuss and put it into context. Okay, so let's just get to the point, shall we? Will the low inventory that plagued the housing market this spring persist through the summer? So we have a couple things going on, right? We have lower inventory nationwide still going on. That's been like that for years and years and years now. But we also have these rising interest rates, which are slowing the economy down. But that's what they want. And I'm not being all paranoid and a conspiracy theorist. The Federal Reserve Board really wants to slow the economy. That's what they want to do. That's their whole job, is to quote unquote take away the punch bowl when people are having too much fun. That was a quote from the Federal Reserve Board chair in like the 1960s, 1970s, and everyone uses that quote because that's kind of their one line hypothesis. So summer is traditionally a busy season, blah blah blah. We know that. 2023 is a strange time for sure. Inflation, volatile mortgage rates, high home prices, impending recession. So we need to know, are mortgage rates going to go down? When will the prices drop, if any? And you're already seeing prices drop on the west, like it's a bifurcated map, right? So if you look at the US and you split it down the Mississippi, the west is losing home inventory prices and value, and then the east is just going balls to the wall. So Dave Myers, hosts the Bigger Pockets on the market, did some predictions here. So will mortgage rates go down? So on January 2021, mortgage rates were at historic lows. We know that. So a lot of people locked in their mortgage, which means a lot of people are not selling. They're never going to sell that 2% mortgage rate. So the Federal Reserve have increased the federal funds rate, the overnight rate at which the commercial banks borrow from each other, right? So that's how they slow the economy. And we can see the rate change all the way up until May, and they don't have one accounted for. So we can see it went from that all the way to 5%, 7%. At this point, it hasn't ruled out additional hikes. He says it expects it to be within the 6.25 to 7% range during the summer, and I completely agree with that. Now, what's important to know is that you can buy and refinance, right? You can buy, hold on to something for a year or 2, 3 years or whatever, and then refinance. And also, when you are buying, you can get them to pay down your mortgage rate. So always ask that. What's happening with home sales volume? The mortgage rate affects the home sales because they impact affordability. The higher rate, the higher your monthly payment, the more interest you pay over time, and the less house you can afford, whatever. So 10 years of steady growth. We can see it peaked in 2021. Now the expert says that the volumes to fluctuate in the coming months. Home sales volume will likely see a seasonal bounce in the coming months, but will remain well below 2022 levels. I completely agree with that. Now, the big question, which all inquiring minds want to know, is will home prices drop? And before I even see what the expert says on this one, even though I've already read it, but it's going to be highly localized, right? San Francisco prices are dropping, Los Angeles prices are dropping, Austin prices are dropping. They were frothy markets. A lot of them have been left since the pandemic. Even the ones that did well during the pandemic are still seeing some valuations go down, baby. So supply and demand determine home prices. We know that. With mortgage rates high, many home buyers will be priced out of the upper range of their home search, which is probably kind of good, right? That means fewer buyers competing for the same houses, so it could bring prices down. But you have to remember, we have this low inventory at the same time. So at the same time, they say some would-be sellers can't afford to move because they don't want to lose their low mortgage rates. That's another one. And they don't want to get into a high interest rate, right? Of course, every real estate market has different supply and demand. The direction of prices will vary significantly by city, of course, but prices will likely remain modestly below 2022 levels on a national scale. I expect some cities in the Northeast, Midwest, and South could see year-over-year growth, while many cities in the West can see further declines. I completely agree with that. So if you're looking for a buy and hold, if you're looking for a rental, an investment, or whatever, might be something to look at in those Northeast areas, in the West areas, and in the Midwest areas right now, right? by the time you kind of do your research and fly out, look at the market or interview realtors or whatever you do, it could be already, 5 percentage points lower than what it was, after 6 months. So you could be getting some deals there if you start looking, or I think now would be a great time to be laying the groundwork with your team, with your investigation, with your knowledge base. If there's a market that you've been curious about or maybe wanting to invest in sometime, now would be the time to do your research on it and go a little bit further than just research. Go in there, start making connections, start meeting people, and see what the hell is up. Because then when the prices do potentially fall down, you can be within that strike zone, and that's what you really want to do. You want to set your team up and set your thing up before you really need it, right? That's kind of the best framework for any kind of endeavor, right? You start training before you need to do it. You start being healthy before you need to, before you have a health crisis, etc. So why is housing inventory so low? This is actually a pretty good question. And these are all macro things. And this is why real estate stuff is so tricky if you're looking to invest or whatever, because you talk about macro trends because you want to know what's happening on the macro level, but it really is all micro and it's so local. So low housing inventory has changed property buyers since the Great Recession. Of course, in the pandemic only exacerbated the problem. There are a few factors at work. Investors swooped over inventory. That's so true. You even see hedge funds that just completely decimated inventory. There are markets, very popular markets in the South that like something like American Homes for Rent or BlackRock have bought up 30% of all inventory. That's insane. That prices so many people out of the market. That takes so much inventory up, and it really is just absolutely wild. So real estate investors pounced on the housing market in 2021, representing 24% of single-family home purchases. Record low mortgage rates gave investors access to free money. Yes, there are fewer new construction homes. Pandemic-related supply chain issues and labor shortages have made it difficult for builders to keep up with a new housing demand, for sure. Some sellers are delaying their plans. Many would-be sellers want to keep their existing mortgages and avoid shopping for their next home while inventory is low. So true. They want to keep that 2%. Why wouldn't you, For now, he says the inventory on a national level will stay above last year's levels, but remain far below pandemic levels. There's no current indication inventory is going to return to what it was before the pandemic anytime soon. Yeah, completely agree. You have a lot of home builders building things right now, but still, I think it's going to be about the same. I really think everything's going to be about the same, minus some west, north, east, and just kind of northwest areas losing some ground, but everything else is, I think, going to be kind of trickling along, if you will. He says it's nearly impossible to describe the national housing market as either a buyer or selling market because there's significant variance by region and city. Broadly speaking, the Northeast, Midwest, and Southwest will likely be in a seller's market, albeit much more balanced in recent years. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a crash. I think it's just going to be a straight up kind of rebalancing. Meanwhile, the West will likely be a bit cooler, and most Western cities in a buyer's market or in a flat, more balanced market. Completely agree. So will this crash, right? Will the housing market crash? A lot of uncertainty, blah, blah, blah. Experts believe a housing market crash in 2023 is unlikely. I completely agree. You got a lot of good stuff, a lot of years and years and years of a very strong housing market. So it's going to be a lot for it to crash. But one reason that's lending standards are tightening now, leading up to the 2008 crash. And that was, kind of a blip in the system. A lot of people look at that and they say, oh man, it's going to crash again because 2008 crashed and we have the same factors, blah, blah, blah. You had these financial systems that were propped up, I kind of think illegally or whatever, but were propped up on a lot of kind of loopholes in the system, right? And because of that crash, we don't have those loopholes anymore. I'm sure we have other loopholes for sure, but I'm not sure they're as big as this. I'm not sure they're exacerbated as much as this. So it's definitely something to look at and be aware of, but I would not think a housing crash is going to happen either. Most borrowers today have fixed rate mortgages, so even though rates are higher, borrowers have predictable monthly payments and are less likely to get hit with payment stock if interest rates rise. Another factor that makes a market crash unlikely is the homeowners have record levels of equity, right? So since the pandemic, most housing markets have just gone ape crazy, and because of that, people have a lot of equity. So they have a lot of equity they can borrow. they won't necessarily be foreclosed upon so quickly, because what you saw in 2008 was that people were getting these mortgages that would have rate increases, rate fluctuations, and it was such a thin line where they were, meeting their payments, and then as soon as the rates increase, they're like, oh shoot, I can't afford this, and they didn't have enough equity to do anything with. Now it's different. We have homes with a lot of equity in it, and we have these fixed rate mortgages that aren't going to just fly off the shelves if something happens. This can help homeowners weather the market downturns and avoid becoming underwater on their mortgages. Bottom line, keep in mind the housing market predictions are best guesses. Yeah, for sure. All these predictions presume the government reaches a debt ceiling agreement and does not default on its debt or get so close to U.S. credit is downgraded. If either of these events occur, mortgage rates will spike and put significant downward pressure on housing prices. Of course, no one can time the market, so buyers and sellers shouldn't base their decisions solely on what they think the market will or won't do. Ultimately, the best time to buy or sell a home is when the timing works for your financial situation. And I think ultimately the best time to buy a home is when you find a multifamily and can house hack it first, but that's just me. All right. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe to this channel for sure. I'm really enjoying this just on a personal note, the little real estate channel. I have a crypto channel, but I like real estate more. So this is always fun. I think you can tell from my excitement just in a article, right? I get so excited. So reach out if you have any questions. Putting together maybe like a little ebook or make it like a small little course, it'd be like $4 or whatever, just something to introduce you to some of the kind of lessons and things I've learned over the course of 100 flips. And so and 200 sales. So something to look out for sure, and something to really be engage with on this channel, right? So if you want housing market news and you want thoughts on your particular situation, reach out to me. We'll see what we can do.